Only one. Sorry. Hi, I'm Alex. I'm an alcoholic. I have the honor of introducing our speaker today because I got to know Rick through jumping into service. I got here, believe it or not, I've only been here for 4 years. January or February 23rd. I know it feels like I've been here forever, but my first position that I took in district was the hotline chair. And Rick was grandfathered in on my list, and I was so lucky to have him because it was really hard to get people to answer the phone. And the crazy thing about hotline is that at one point I know that the hotline was popping. People called in to AA all the time. Well, now in the age of the internet and Google and the fact that you can pay to be the first, second, third, fourth thing that pops up, the AA hotline is way down there on the Google. So people don't get our it's hard to find our phone number when you put the internet when you put AA in the internet. Um but and then this new age of like trying to figure out how to have this service notify people and then change over phone numbers. It was it took a lot of patience. And Rick at one point was stuck on the hotline for like 3 months because nobody would, they just weren't switching it over to the next person. Every time I'd call, they would be like, "Oh yeah, we got it. We got the new phone number and everything." And I'm like, "Well, then why is Rick still getting calls for 3 months while he's trying to party in Mexico right now?" So, but he answered the calls, and he meets people at IHOP to take them. He loves a 12-step meeting, and he just knows how to share his experience, strength, and hope with a newcomer. And I know that I didn't get here right when COVID hit, but I know that he was responsible for helping start a really strong group um, in COVID that was really important for a lot of people and kept a lot of people sober, and was a place for people that were new in sobriety to find um, AA in the middle of COVID. And that is just so crucial. And I just can't wait for you to share your story. Come up here. Thank you. Thanks, Alex.
Hey everybody, I'm Rick. I'll be your drunk for today. Um, my sobriety date is January 4th, 2016, and yeah, I'm 68 years old. And yeah, I'm a slow learner. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that story. So, I've been sober 10 years. I just got back from Mexico, 2 months in Mexico. I've been going for 25 years. Needless to say, a whole lot of those years were drunken hazes in Mexico. And I have to tell you that sober is much, much, much better and also a whole lot cheaper to go to Mexico. And what a better way to be reintroduced back to Missoula than to be here at this meeting and to be with my people, you know? And, you know, I didn't think I was part of you people for a long, long time. And I'll get to that later in my story. So, like everybody, I started drinking young, 12. I didn't think that was weird that I used to hit a bottle of vodka on the way to junior high school. We hid it in the woods, me and my friends. And so we'd take a little hit on the way to junior high as we walked there. And I thought that was pretty normal. Um, like many people, I had a pretty traumatic childhood. My father was an alcoholic, probably. We were army brats. We moved constantly. By the time I was 10, I lived in 28 states and 13 countries. So my sister and I were all we really had. But a lot of people have trauma in their childhood. They don't end up being drunks. I think that I was just sort of destined to be that. I found out later on kind of what it was doing for me. But all through high school, this is what I was like. I was 6'3" in high school. I was 6 feet tall in the sixth grade. So I was the booze buyer for everybody. I had a mustache at like seventh grade. So never had a fake ID. I just walk in and buy it. Nobody ever said anything. When I turned 21, I always thought, can I tell these people, they've been selling to me for like 10 years or not, I don't want them to feel bad. But anyway, having drunk parents made it easy to be a drunk kid. When we go camping, my parents would get drunk camping, then we would go steal their booze and then we'd get hammered. And so alcohol was part of my story for my whole life. Um, my two best friends in high school, Brad and Wayne, we were like three musketeers, and we got into a lot of trouble most of the time, and usually was because of me. Luckily, my dad always blamed Brad. So, but it was me that got all the trouble done. So, but I was smart. I never went to jail. I never got caught. I was a good student. I got good grades. I was on the football team. Um, I was in student government. I was a good chameleon, and that's what people that move around a lot and don't have any anchors in their life are good at. They're good at fitting in. They're good at being whatever people need us to be. And so, I'm sorry, I'm still getting used to the climate, believe it or not. It's dry here, so my nose is running all the time. That I don't understand. But anyway, so I drank and then I finally got into an industry. I became a debt collector at 21 years old because, well, my drug dealing days were over with because the FBI were looking for me. So my dad, who was a cop, told me it's time to leave town, and I left town. I grew up in Northern California in Eureka, Humboldt County. Pretty hard place to stay sober, by the way, because it's the weed capital of maybe the United States. So Humboldt County, homegrown, been around a long time. So drugs were always readily available. I was a drug dealer, but drugs aren't my story. Alcohol made it easy for me to do a lot of things that I probably wouldn't have done, like be an IV drug user. I thought that was normal. I don't think most of my friends thought it was very normal. Um, so when I got broke, and had to leave town and yeah, thank you. And I know it's real quick. I'm not withdrawing from anything, I swear. Um, so I became a debt collector, an industry that's kind of like used car salesman. We drink heavily. So I worked in an industry where I was a manager. In the management meeting, you go into the boss's office, he'd close the blinds on his glass enclosure where he could watch all the collectors out there on the floor. And then he put bumps of meth in people's coffee. I didn't need meth. I wasn't a big speed fan. Obviously, I was an alcoholic. I liked the other way going, but I was in an industry where I could be an alcoholic and excel. In fact, because I could outdrink all my bosses, I kept getting promoted. I think I was kind of talented. I think maybe too. That's what they tell me. But by the age of 30, I was the vice president. I was running companies. I had 150 people working for me. I was responsible for a $3 million a month revenue stream for my company. Um, so, I didn't have a lot of incentive to stop drinking, you know. I was being rewarded for it. And so, that continued through my whole career, but I knew I had a problem. I mean, I knew I had a problem because I only had one speed of drinking, and that was eventually blacked out and face down. I outdrank everybody, and that was what my friends thought was super cool. And I finally realized that's really not very cool at all, that I could stay standing longer than anybody else. Um, it helps to be this, it absorbs a lot of alcohol. But I knew I had a problem. I've been married twice. First time I was 30 and said I should be married. So I said, you'll do. And that lasted about a year. And then I got married again. And of course, I married another person that drank like me. So in the 90s, I knew it was an issue and decided to go to rehab. So Kaiser Permanente class of 93, I think I was. So that got me sober, but it's pretty hard staying sober when your wife encourages you to drink. Not that it's her fault, but it's tough to do. So because I was able to get sober and a couple times stay sober for a year, I did go through a year of treatment for hepatitis C. That's one of those things that I guess sharing needles is probably not a good thing to do. And so I had to not drink for that year. And so that gave me a feeling that I had power, right, over this thing because I could stop. But I certainly wasn't happy when I stopped. All I thought about was drinking again. So when I reached the end of my year, what was my reward to myself? Go back out drinking again, right? Because I knew I got through that year. So I'd been in and out of AA meetings for a long time through all of the 90s. But I never knew anybody in AA. And I applied some weird reasons why I thought I wasn't an alcoholic. I thought I wasn't an alcoholic because I didn't get any DUIs. Well, I got one when I was 21. It was a fun one. The two very short Hispanic CHP officers. They said, touch your nose, put your hands over your head, put your hands behind your back, click, click. And I'm like, whoa, they tricked me into getting cuffs on. So that was humiliating, and I didn't ever want it to happen again. So what did I do? Did I stop drinking? Did I stop drinking and driving? I got breathalyzers, 3 of them, so that I could tell when I was below the limit so I could drive again, which wasn't very often. The way I drank when I woke up in the morning, I was still blew over a point oh 0.08. So I checked my BA to see when I could go to the liquor store because the other way I diluted myself was never buying more than 1 day's supply. And that way I thought, I don't have a closet full of booze, so I'm not an alcoholic. I had all these reasons I wasn't like you, even though I had a book. I read the book. I read all the things that I was doing that were in the book. But I go to meetings and go, I've got a car and I get a new car every 2 years. I've got a house. I've got wife, kids. I haven't lost anything. I go to the doctor and it would say, they'd have like a checklist. You've been fired from a job. No. Have you gone to jail? No. Have you lost your wife? No, and I'm like, okay, I'm not an alcoholic, right? Well, that is not the definition of being an alcoholic. We know what it says up there, right? We're powerless over alcohol. And I didn't think I was powerless. So 10 years ago, I, you know, I don't think I had a bottom, to be honest with you. I know why I was drinking. I was committing slow suicide. I'd lost my dad. I'd lost both of my friends in high school. I was losing drinking buddies left and right. My high school friends died in their 50s from complications from alcoholism. And it seemed like I was drinking a gallon of vodka a day and it wasn't killing me. But I was finally becoming a maintenance drinker and it wasn't good maintenance. I wasn't getting any of the feelings that I used to get from alcohol. I was just drinking to not feel like shit. And then when I wasn't drinking, I felt like shit too. So I was only two speeds. I was hungover or drunk. And I never drank before 5, which that to me meant I wasn't an alcoholic either. I ran a company. I ended up starting my own collection agency. I employed others, which is carte blanche to do anything you want, by the way. So, for me, the holidays, Thanksgiving to me, holidays are Thanksgiving until New Year's. Those are my drinking days. That's when I can drink from morning to night because they didn't have to work. They were holidays. So finally on January 4th of 2016, right after the holidays, I went to a meeting in Caldwell, Idaho. That's where I lived at the time. By the way, I've been drunk in many cities, Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, Boise, Bakersfield. I wonder if I'm missing any there. But I went into a meeting and I think it was a great meeting. I mean, it was a lot of rules, right? They had like a 3-minute egg timer. Everybody had a timer. You couldn't touch your phones. You know, you pick up the phone, they'd yell at you. You had to pay attention. You could share. And it was a podium meeting, and which scared the shit out of me because I did not want to get up and share. I'd shared before. I've been to many meetings. I had like 15 um 90-day coins. I probably had 25 6-month coins. I had a whole bunch of 100 of 9-month coins, and I had 2 1-year coins, only 2 1-year coins when I came in the program again. And so I went to the meeting. I was too prideful to ask somebody to help me, which I'd always been. By the way, I worked the steps with me as my own sponsor. That really did not work out very well. Hard to be honest, right? So, so finally, a guy in the meeting was kind of took me under his wing. He's got 28 years now of sobriety, Dennis, and he eventually became my first sponsor. Not because I asked him, because I whined so much, he finally volunteered. He's like, geez, I'll be your temporary sponsor till you find somebody else. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll do that. And then let's work the steps. So I got to working the steps with my sponsor. It took me 6 months, in the group. I remember when I did my first service, they said they needed somebody for TSNAC, which is a special needs, for handicapped people in AA. And it was a barbecue. And I'm like, okay. And he says, you should volunteer. And I said, okay, I'll volunteer. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I didn't know what TSNAC was. I knew what barbecue was. I knew what that was. And I was the barbecue cook in Boise on a 110-degree day. And I fucking hated that, boy. I was so mad and so resentful. And I'm like, can't these freaking handicapped people cook their own steak? And I had to buy water, and that really pissed me off that they didn't give me free water. So I got a huge resentment over my first service, and I didn't know why I did it, but I knew one thing when I joined this group. They saw I was showing up regularly, and they said, "You're going to make coffee." And I'm like, "No, I'm not." And it's like, "Yeah, yeah, you are." And so I was like the never guy, by the way. My sponsor still calls me the never guy. Um, and so I started making coffee, even though I didn't drink coffee. I stopped drinking coffee for 5 years. So that was another way I thought I could deal with my anxiety that ended up being caused by being hungover all the time, right? That went away when I got sober. And so I started making coffee. And after 6 months, they said, okay, you're going to chair a meeting. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. And so they're like, yeah, you are. Here's the script, and this guy will show you how to do it. And you're going to do it for 6 months. Next thing I knew, I was the treasurer. Next thing I knew, I was the secretary. Next thing I knew, I was the GSR. And I remember, for the first year, Rick's problem was Rick, period. I mean, I was a self-centered, selfish asshole. And I like to tell people that AA made me 50% less of an asshole. I still have 50% to work on, and I found out the other 50%. I'll tell you about that in a little bit. But anyway, I started doing the things that I was told to do, that were suggested for me to do. It's all voluntary, this program is. And I had a real problem with the whole higher power stuff, right? Because as far as I was concerned, God didn't do much for me. He didn't save any of my friends or my father or my mother or all the people I loved. He didn't stop me from drinking. I'm a Catholic. In fact, I'm half Mexican. And I always like to say the only bigger Catholics than Mexicans are Italian Catholics or Irish Catholics, probably. They drink more though. But I went to my priest. My priest did not help me at all because priests don't know much about alcoholism. And so one thing my priest never suggested was to go to an AA meeting. He did suggest how I should vote on an anti-abortion measure, which I thought was pretty weird. And I'm like, what's that got to do with my soul? So when I did the third step, when I did the third step, I got down on my knees and did the prayer and said, I don't believe any of this bullshit, but I'm going to do it because I can't get to the fourth and fifth if I don't get the third done. And I'm like, I'm going to fake it and I'm going to say I believe this. But, for the first year or two, it was you guys that were my higher power. It was the group, it was the fellowship. And so I became a chair. I remember getting huge resentment one time because I was a chair and nobody showed up. And I got super pissy and I went to my sponsor and I go, motherfucker, why in the hell am I doing this when nobody shows up? Those assholes, they can't even show up to a meeting. Why am I blah, 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 and he goes, you don't get why you're doing this? And I'm like, yeah, to help those fucking people that aren't showing up. He goes, no, he goes, you're doing it to help you. He goes, we show up whether they show up or not. And at one point he said, I'm going to just leave AA, fuck AA, nobody cares about me, and like you're going to get a pat on the back we don't get pats on the back in AA. We don't get them. We don't give them. When you get your coin, that's as close to a pat on the back as you're going to get for a year. So my sponsor did the greatest thing he could do. He said, if you want to leave AA, leave AA. We don't need you. AA was here before you, AA will be here after you, and AA will be around. So when you want to come back, you just come back. And I'm like, well, that didn't work out the way I thought it was going to. I thought they were going to beg me to not leave. So, so I learned why I did service. And I learned that this thing keeps me sober. AA does. And at one point, my sponsor said to me, he goes, you can't only be friends with normies. He said, you have to get to know people in this room. And I'm like, I don't want to know these people in this room. So I don't know. I think I'm fine. He goes, no, no, you're gonna go out to have lunch with these people. You're gonna go out to have coffee with them. You're gonna hang around with them outside of these meetings. And I'm like, well, I don't think I have anything in common with them. And he's like, well, I'm telling you, you need to do it. So I did it. And, I've been here 5 years. I can say I know quite a few people in the room. By the time I left Caldwell, Idaho, after 5 years of sobriety there, I could walk into a room in AA and know everybody in the room but a newcomer. And that meant a lot to me. I sold my car here in Missoula. I sold a Mazda CX-5. The guy I sold it to, I'm like, I know he looks familiar. And I'm like, he's either in AA or he's in government because I do a lot of government stuff here in town. I'm on the planning board and stuff like that. But and I didn't want to ask him. And finally, on one of the calls, I go, "Are you a friend of Bill?" He goes, "Yeah." And I go, "Oh, I know. I know you." And I knew him from the Bonner Park meeting. And so I sold my car to a person in the program. I kept meeting people in the program everywhere. By the way, it's super hard to stay anonymous in Missoula. In Boise, where there's a million people, it's pretty easy, but it's like, I mean, I can't say I know. I met a realtor today in a meeting, and my sister is like, who? I know them all. I can't tell you. So, um, in fact, the meeting I joined 5 years ago, so I came here during the pandemic. And by the way, I was in the hotline in Idaho too. And the hotline in Idaho, they have a central office in Idaho. So at 5 o'clock, they switched their phones over to us. So the hotline calls you get in Idaho are at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they're this, hi, drunk, I need you to help me. And crying and everything else. And you can't help them. All you can do is say, take my number, call me when you're sober, and I'll get you help. Let me get your number down. Right. Here it's breeze. All they want is directions to a meeting. So super cool. But occasionally we get a 12-step call here. But so I started a Zoom on my group in Idaho because I saw what was happening with the pandemic. My sponsor and I had a big difference of opinion on that. He thought that we were living in fear and we needed to continue to have in-person meetings. And I thought we need to help the alcoholic who still suffers, and we need to do that any way we can. So I started a Zoom meeting 2 weeks before the church kicked us out of the church. So that's how I'm known now in Idaho. He's the guy that started the Zoom meeting for our group. No, but I don't know anybody in the group hardly anymore. They've changed so much in 5 years. but I still go back when I go. So, it's my home group. That's where I started at. My home group now is Missoula Oasis Persists, which was an online group. And man, when I moved, so the pandemic did a lot of things to me. I own my own business, a collection agency. We collect from restaurants. That's our business. That's our niche. How do you think that went during the pandemic? So all of a sudden I went from having income to having no income. And I did what, a person trained in the 12 steps did. I panicked like hell for 3 months. And I complained about it in meetings and made a fool out of myself before I finally started to apply these steps to, everything, to all our affairs. I inventoried what I had. I thought about what I could do. And I decided to sell my house and move to Montana, retire early with zero income. And thank God they had pandemic assistance programs finally. And it made it easy for me to move. So I retired early. And the reason I came here to Missoula is my family lives here. My sister, my niece, my nephew, their kids. Um, and since I was 21 years old, I've never lived more than closer than maybe 5 hours from my family. Um, for good reason. I didn't, I wanted to be a solitary drunk. I didn't want to be around family. I didn't want to go to family things. I I'd buy tickets to a concert and get drunk and never go. That was the kind of drunk that I was. So I was an isolating, killing myself drunk. And when I came here, I was 5 years sober. And luckily, when I would come visit my family, which I've done for 30 years here in Missoula, I would not drink. So they didn't know what my level of alcoholism was. And my nephew and my niece lived in Portland for a couple of years, went to Portland State. And when I would go out with them, I would maintain. I would never get drunk around them. So they're like, we don't believe you're an alcoholic. And I'm like, oh, if only you could have seen me. I wish that we had a camera of our last day drunk that filmed that one day from beginning to end. So we can never forget how freaking miserable we were or how miserable I was. I got up off the floor that day and said, I'm tired of waking up on the floor. I'm tired of waking up in where I don't know how I got here. I'm tired of my friends telling me the stupid shit that I did when I was blacked out. I'm tired of the risky behavior that I took. And so when I worked through the steps, it's amazing. All those times I got sober, one time I was sitting in Texas Roadhouse where I went every Wednesday to have their $9.99 sirloin steak special. And I go where all single lonely people sit at the bar. And I would know all the bartenders, we'd talk and everything. And I didn't notice that they were pouring beer. And I'm like, holy crap, something happened, right? That promise that they say will happen, that did not bother me. I didn't think about drinking for the first time in my life. When I got into this program, I was going to become drink like a gentleman, like they say in the book. Well, I never drank like a gentleman. I drank like a drunk. And I could never make the commitment that I was never going to drink again, but that's not the commitment. The commitment is I'm not going to drink today. That's it. That's all that this program asks from me. So I'm lucky enough to have sponsored people. I've got 3 sponsees now. I've got 2 that have been sober for 3 years. I've lost a whole lot. It's heartbreaking to be a sponsor because you know that people are going to go back out and some of them aren't going to come back. But you hope that eventually, like my sponsor would say, I give them a head full of AA when they have a belly full of alcohol, and maybe they'll come back. That's all we can do, right? You can't make anybody stop drinking. And I've been fortunate enough to help friends that were sober deal with alcoholic family members, one who lost her brother. Um, and I knew it was going to happen. I told her it would happen because if you're not willing to change, if you're not willing to do the things it takes to stay sober, there's only a couple ways this ends, right? The book tells us in incarcerated, insane, or dead. And there's not too many 80-year-old gallon a day vodka drinkers out there, I don't think. So when I got sober, I discovered a couple things. One, I decided to go to counseling, which a lot of people in AA do. You guys are stopping the supply of counselors in Missoula. I want you to know that. I finally found one. I went to 2 sessions of counseling, and within 2 sessions, my counselor said, "Pretty sure you've got ADHD." And I go, "ADHD? I was great. I was a good student. I don't have, I read fine, I read good." And she goes, "It's not a learning disorder. It's a brain disorder." And so we went through the test, and it turns out I had severe untreated combined ADHD. And so I learned why I was drinking. I mean, I was drinking because I was a drunk, right? Because it worked. But I drank because that's why my brain wouldn't stop at night. That's why I couldn't sleep at night. That's why I just couldn't stop the thoughts going through my head. So, finding out at 68 that you've got ADHD, I'm like, well, thanks for finding out now. I'm retired. I'm not in school. I don't work, but it can make me a better person. So that's the 50%, the other 50% asshole, because ADHD people, they love to interrupt you because they've got a thought going through our head that we know will disappear in about 2 seconds. And if we don't spit it out of our mouth and interrupt you, then we'll forget about it. So I take Adderall for it, weirdest thing in the world. I take speed, and I can sleep at night. I also found out I had severe sleep apnea. So that's the other thing I was treating. And I got a CPAP machine, which when I first got it, I told my family who wants me to be in a relationship. I said, "Finally in a relationship. It's with Resi. That's my CPAP machine." I sleep with her every night. And I think it's going to be a long relationship, and it has been. So and I got to do some really great things. I still go to Mexico for 2 months a year. I've been doing that for 25 years. I go with my sister. My sister is newly blind from macular degeneration. It's funny, I'm the drunk, but all the bad shit hit my sister. So, stroke, and now macular degeneration. So she's fully blind now. We went to Mexico for 2 months, and I'm able to help her get around. She's able to help me not walk away from her in a grocery store and leave her wandering like this. So, we don't do that. Um, and I would none of those things would happen if I were drinking. Believe me, I wouldn't even have a relationship with my family. I would have a relationship with nobody. This program allows me to help other people. I still answer the hotline, by the way. And they forgot to turn it off when I was in Mexico. They promised. And somebody goes, "Hey, do you know where a meeting is?" I don't know, but I'll tell you where one is in Mazatlan. So, but anyway, and I'm a secretary of my group. I'm also a CASA. So CASA is a court-appointed special advocate for kids in the foster care system. It's a brutally difficult thing to do, but it has great payoffs. But I thought that given my background, that I think I've got a different perspective on addiction and alcoholism than maybe 21-year-old nursing students do. And I think that it helps that I can bring that. On Monday, I'll be doing Tech Cafe at Missoula Aging Services. So I help old people with technology. Wait a minute, I am an old person. I'm an old nerd. I still game and everything. I still do racing with a virtual racing setup and all that kind of stuff. I suck at it at my age, by the way. So and never play online games because I hate getting screamed at by a 10-year-old. So um, I also got to do comedy at the ZAC, and I've done that for 3 years. They had a senior comedy night. I decided to do it because then I think 6-year-old niece did the kids comedy night, and I'm like, if she's brave enough to go up, I'm brave enough to go up. So I did it. I talked a little bit about being a raging alcoholic last year. which is, we don't talk about AA to people outside the program. That's one of the tenets of AA, plus the secret handshake. And but being able to talk about some of the trauma I've had and stuff like that, and make it funny, I think is great. Um, but I'm an alcoholic not because of those things. My sister and I went through the same trauma. She's went through more. She lived with my mom, who's the worst. My mom is a toxic narcissist, so that never wanted kids. That's a great way to grow up. And but I've never seen my sister drunk ever. She never did drugs, even though she was a trimmigrant. She trimmed buds in Humboldt County. That's what we call them, trimmigrants. And I used to do that's what you do for Christmas. Go to your friend's house while trim buds, and then you get to take the shake home with you. So but it goes to show that you either are or you're not. I mean, everybody that tells a story of how they picked up the first time is like my story. I think we picked up alcohol the first time, we went, man, that's the shit. That is it for me. And it's always been. And do I miss it? Not at all. In fact, I've had a lot of health issues, because I'm not killing myself actively anymore, right? I actually want to live and spend the money I save for my retirement. Believe it or not, I saved money for my retirement as an alcoholic because my best friend was a financial advisor. So he was harping on me all the time. Did you fund your IRA? So I want to live, and so I thought I was not a diabetic, wrong. You know, I'm like, oh man, I'm the only old guy in AA that's not a diabetic. I just was undiagnosed. I'm a diabetic. I've got sleep apnea. I've got COPD. 40 years of smoking did that. All these health issues. There's nothing that alcohol would ever improve in my life. There's a movie out there that's about the end of the world. It's 2035 or 2011, something like that. And there's a story. There's two alcoholics that are on a ship, and one of them has been sober for 50 years, and this giant wave's about to hit him, and he picks up a drink, and his friend goes, "Man, are you going to drink now?" And he's like, "Why not? If that was me, I would not want to face the end of my life with a drink in my hand." That is everything, whatever happens, that's what this program taught me to deal with. Those promises don't say that we will have money. It says fear of financial uncertainty will leave us. Those fears will leave us. I can talk to people now. I can ask people about themselves. I learned that in the last 10 years. My sister has helped me with that. She'll introduce me to someone and she'll go, "Why'd you only talk about you?" And I'm like, well, that's me. That was me, right? I didn't care what you had to say. I just wanted to let you talk till I could talk, right? So this is being asked to speak is like my favorite thing in the world. So, but this program has given me all the things in the promises that say that they're there have have come true for me. And it's great that I can help my friends, my friends and my sponsees who say never to, I will never believe in God. Lapsed Mormon who had lots of problems with the church, as many people do in this program, by the way. And he thought he would never be close to his family, and he's close to all of them. And it's just wonderful to see the promises come for other people and to see people with their first year. Man, the first year is the hardest. It is absolutely the hardest. It gets easier from then on, but you don't get as many coins. So, the first year I'm like, oh man, I get them every 3 months. That's pretty awesome. But but man, I tell you, I love that 10-year coin I got. I never thought I'd have more than a 1-year coin. I never told anybody that I was in AA, and I don't put it on Facebook. I don't tell people until I was 3 years in the program because I was pretty sure I was going to fuck it up, right? That I was going to go back out. I don't think that anymore. So I want to thank everybody that's here for coming and thank you all and congratulate you all on your birthdays. It's an exciting time. Don't stop. because it gets better. It gets way better after the first year. It gets better when you start helping other people. And the weirdest thing that'll happen to you is when somebody after a meeting says that they want what you have, and you go, me? Me? You know, me? I mean, for me, when my niece asked me to watch her kids, I'm like, what? I'd burn the house down, you know? But I'm not that person anymore. So thank you, everybody, for inviting me.